So here I'm going to show you how to use masking fluid. There are a couple of different kinds you can buy. This is called Frisket, but it's basically the same thing as masking fluid. And then here's another brand that's called masking fluid. So you need a rubber tipped brush, and this is a rubber brush. You see the tip is flexible. If you use your regular paintbrush, you'll ruin it because you can't wash it out. What you'll do after you're finished with it, when it's dry, you can just peel it right off of the rubber tip brush. If you don't have these things, you can use rubber cement and a toothpick, and that works pretty well too. So I started my design, you can see, and it's dry, but I'm going to go in and finish it now. So I'm just going to dip the very tip of the rubber brush into the masking fluid. And you don't paint with it so much as just kind of push it around on the paper, spreading it out. It takes a minute to get used to using it because it's pretty thin. So everywhere that I put the masking fluid, it will repel the paint and leave the white paper behind. So I'll go back in and finish this later. I have one that I've already finished that I want to show you. So I've made a city scene with a moon and some stars. And you can tell that it's dry because when I touch it, it doesn't come off on my fingers. It takes about 15 minutes or so for it to totally dry, but you can check it. You'll know when it's dry. All right, so I'm mixing up some paint. And as you can see, I just paint right over the top of the dried masking fluid. And it repels the paint. There's a lot of different ways you can use this. This is a pretty simple application. You can do layers of paint where in between each layer you add more masking fluid. You can use it for highlights on things, in landscapes. So after I'm finished, I'll let it dry for a couple of hours until the paint's totally dry. So depending on how moist it is, it might take a little longer. So I finished my other flowers with the masking fluid, and then I'm going to put in some color. And you can see it's totally dry, I can touch it. There's different ways you can paint. You can go in and add paint to each little section, and the masking fluid will form a little wall and keep colors from running into each other. I'm going to do a wash, and I'm just starting with a really, really bright yellow. And as I go down, I'll add water to it to lighten it up so that it's lighter at the bottom. And this is a pretty wet wash, so the paint that I put on is going to bleed. If I didn't want it to bleed very much, I could stop and let it dry for, about a half a minute. But I would like it to bleed out of the areas where I'm painting. Just painting in the flowers. Using some reds and some oranges. I'm using strong colors because I want to get some nice contrast between the white and these bright colors. You can do any design you want. It doesn't have to be what I did. Come up with something unique. I think it's a good idea to draw it out on a piece of paper first so you kind of know what you want to do. And then you can go in with the masking fluid. But I wouldn't draw it on your watercolor paper. I would just have it on a different piece of paper, because otherwise the pencil lines will show. Adding some green to the flowers. And then I have these little dots here and there of masking fluid. I'm going to add some red to those, a little more red, so that I get a halo around a white dot. And then I will want to let this dry for at least 2 hours, maybe longer. I let it dry as long as you can. All right, so let it dry, and this one's also dry, and now I'm ready to start peeling off the masking fluid. So I'll just use my finger and kind of get it started. You have to rub on it, and then also you can kind of pull off the masking fluid now that it's dry. If you have some that you're having a hard time getting off, you can use a kneaded eraser, but it will get stuck in the kneaded eraser. But if you are really having a hard time, that will easily get it off. I'm using my fingernail here, scraping it. And it leaves behind a nice, bright contrast design. So now I'll work on my other painting. Again, I let this dry for probably 3 hours before I start taking off the masking fluid. And you can see how the paint bled outside of where I had the masking fluid. And I like how that looks. It really makes the white pop. There are lots of ways you can use this, and a million videos you can watch about more complicated methods where you're layering paint and the masking fluid to make multicolor designs. So there are my finished pieces.